Hello, my beautiful people. Today is August 22nd, 2026. Miss Lee here. The audio files you will hear begins a journey through the mindset of delusional pale people whose ideology of superiority above all ethnic groups grants them control over nations. Their brutal, sadistic acts being carried out in this era must end. Listen now to the rising tide of color against white world supremacy.
Preface to The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy by Lothrop Stoddard. Preface. More than a decade ago, I became convinced that the keynote of 20th century world politics would be the relations between the primary races of mankind. Momentous modifications of existing race relations were evidently impending, and nothing could be more vital to the course of human evolution than the character of these modifications, since upon the quality of human life all else depends. Accordingly, my attention was thenceforth largely directed to racial matters. In the preface to an historical monograph, The French Revolution in San Domingo, written shortly before the Great War, I stated, "The worldwide struggle between the primary races of mankind, the conflict of color, as it has been happily termed, bids fair to be the fundamental problem of the 20th century, and great communities like the United States of America, the South African Confederation, and Australasia regard the color question as perhaps the gravest problem of the future." Those lines were penned in June 1914. Before their publication, the Great War had burst upon the world. At that time, several reviewers commented upon the above dictum, and wondered whether, had I written 2 months later, I should have held a different opinion. As a matter of fact, I should have expressed myself even more strongly to the same effect. To me, the Great War was from the first the White Civil War, which, whatever its outcome, must gravely complicate the course of racial relations. Before the war, I had hoped that the readjustments rendered inevitable by the renaissance of the brown and yellow peoples of Asia would be a gradual, and in the main a pacific, process, kept within evolutionary bounds by the white world's inherent strength and fundamental solidarity. The frightful weakening of the white world during the war, however, opened up revolutionary, even cataclysmic, possibilities. In saying this, I do not refer solely to military perils. The subjugation of white lands by colored armies may, of course, occur, especially if the white world continues to rend itself with internecine wars. However, such colored triumphs of arms are less to be dreaded than more enduring conquests, like migrations, which would swamp whole populations and turn countries now white into colored man's lands, irretrievably lost to the white world. Of course, these ominous possibilities existed even before 1914, but the war has rendered them much more probable. The most disquieting feature of the present situation, however, is not the war, but the peace. The white world's inability to frame a constructive settlement, the perpetuation of intestine hatreds, and the menace of fresh white civil wars, complicated by the specter of social revolution, evoke the dread thought that the late war may be merely the first stage in a cycle of ruin. In fact, so absorbed is the white world with its domestic dissensions that it pays scant heed to racial problems, whose importance for the future of mankind far transcends the questions which engross its attention today. This relative indifference to the larger racial issues has determined the writing of the present book. So fundamental are these issues that a candid discussion of them would seem to be timely and helpful. In the following pages, I have tried to analyze in their various aspects the present relations between the white and non-white worlds. My task has been greatly aided by the introduction from the pen of Madison Grant, who has admirably summarized the biological and historical background. A lifelong student of biology, Mr. Grant approaches the subject along that line. My own avenue of approach being world politics, the resulting convergence of different viewpoints has been a most useful one. For the stimulating counsel of Mr. Grant in the preparation of this book, my thanks are especially due. I desire also to acknowledge my indebtedness for helpful suggestions to Messrs. Elaine Ireland, Glenn Frank, and other friends. Lothrop Stoddard, New York City, February 28th, 1920. End of Preface.